All right, so you're running a company, you got a team, and if you got a team, you got to have some meetings. There's no way around it. And I'm pretty sure that if you're like most people or like most teams, meetings is one of those like dreaded, dirty words. I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be like that. In fact, meetings can be awesome. They can be a lot of fun. The key to that is making sure that meetings are something that ultimately that save time and don't waste time, because when people come to meetings, they like to interact with people, and it doesn't matter whether it's in person or it's on Zoom or whatever it might be. So we're going to teach you not only how to make your meetings more efficient, but also how to make them more fun. So we're going to talk about the various kind of meetings you should have and the different ways that you should run those meetings to make sure that everybody loves it. All right, let's rock. So we're going to go through the 6 keys to awesome meetings. And right out of the gate, number 1 is you always want to make sure that when you run meetings that you have very clear-cut rules, okay? You got to have clear rules of engagement for your meetings. And I like to use the same set of rules for every meeting that we ever run. So to give you a few specific examples, one of the things I think that really people run into problems with is when, meetings, you get on a topic and instead of it just being a quick thing, it becomes this rabbit hole that goes way too long. So in my meetings, anybody who's ever a participant in my meetings knows that they can always ring a bell, whether it's a real bell or a virtual bell, they can always ring a bell and have a topic taken offline. So everybody at that point feels like they have control, and it's like we hate when somebody's like, blah, 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 blah. Eliminate that and give everybody the power to be able to table a topic till later. Another rule that I always like to have is to make sure that people are aware of tonality. And it's just one of these things that you got team members, people aren't gonna agree on everything. And when everybody has that power to say, hey, can we get that tonality into check? It's now not this personal thing like, I think you're out of line or I don't like your attitude, but it's this thing that, hey, we all agreed that we're gonna keep our tonality at a certain level and let's check that, okay? So whatever your rules are, just make sure that your rules are clear and consistent and that every single meeting, not only does everybody know what the rules are, but they also are a participant in the rules, okay? Number 2 is to always have an agenda. Whoever is in charge of the meeting, and there always needs to be somebody in charge, that's probably another good rule, but whoever is in charge of the meeting is in charge of the agenda. And it needs to have a standardized agenda, meaning, hey, when we meet on Wednesdays, this is what we go through. But in addition to that, there's also gonna be things that come up. So what's recommended is, if possible, before the meeting, just say, hey, here's the agenda for today's meeting, which is a standardized agenda, and I've added these 1 or 2 things to that, okay? So just know that whatever that lives, whether it's email or whatever, we got a standard agenda and then there's items that we've added to it. All right, so you've got an agenda, and then number 3 is allow team members can add items. All right, team members can add items. So at the beginning of every single meeting, what you do is you go, okay, cool, so this is our agenda. Is there anything that we want to add to that? And, oh yes, I'd also like to talk about this. Oh, I'd like to talk about that. And that achieves a few things. First of all, makes people feel empowered. They're involved in the meeting. They're not just sitting there and hating it, right? So they've got a voice. But also what it does is it really avoids these sort of unnecessary sidewinder conversations. All right, that sounds like a great topic. We don't have it on the agenda today. We either need to have a separate meeting or we can add it to the next meeting. Cool, sound fair. So allowing people to actually participate in the agenda is a really, really big deal. Number 4 is you always want to have somebody that owns the notes, okay? And this might not sound like the sexiest, cool, funnest thing, but it's have somebody, call them the secretary or whatever you want to do. This person is in charge of keeping the notes. Use like a Google Doc or whatever program you use. It doesn't really matter. Even if it's an email, it's fine. But every single email always needs to have notes no matter what, because then you can use it as a reference, and it also just a good way to keep everybody in check. All right? Number 5, and this is kind of where the fun stuff comes in, but number 5 is to have an interactive segment in your meetings whenever possible. Maybe not every meeting, depending on the length. But what we try to do is say, we do a weekly meeting, which we're going to talk about the different types of meetings here in a minute, but we run a huddle on a regular basis. So what we try to do is have different things that we do to interject to keep them fun. So for example, you could do a team exercise in a meeting. So that team exercise could be something like, say something nice about the next team member in line, right? And you just go around and say, hey, this is a nice thing that I have to say. Or you could say, give a piece of constructive feedback about how this person can get even better. Or share one thing that you have as a dream that you haven't shared with many people. Whatever that thing is, that could be a fun thing, is make this interactive sort of thing. One of the things that we've done a lot is we've actually done meditation as a group. At the end of our meetings, we'll turn off our Zoom cameras and we'll have 5 minutes where we all center ourselves and get ready for the day. A pretty obvious exercise that you could do to keep it interactive is to have a brainstorming session. So, on Fridays, for example, you could be like, all right, we're gonna brainstorm a problem. This is the problem, how do we fix it? But just always, and I would play games, but I would try to make sure that number 5, that there's an interactive component to every single meeting that I run, all right? And then number 6, and probably the most important, is that you bring the energy, okay? If it's your meeting, you are the leader, you gotta bring it. Because when you bring a bad attitude and you're like, lazy, lethargic, whatever, so does everybody else, all right? Because if you think about it, what are meetings? Ultimately, meetings are interactions between the group of your coworkers, and if those aren't fun, then what the hell is, all right? And the attitude that you bring is the attitude that everybody's gonna take. So make sure that you bring the energy. And actually, I've got a number 7 that I wanna share at the end that just popped in my head, but I'll tell you about that in just a second, okay? Before we get there, let's talk about the different kinds of meetings that you're gonna be running. So the first major group of meetings are gonna be recurring meetings. These are the meetings that are gonna happen on a regular basis. Okay, first type of recurring meeting that you're probably gonna wanna run is gonna be a daily huddle. Okay, and real quick, I'll tell you the agenda that we use for our daily huddle. All right, we start out the huddle, I say, hey, these are the announcements, or our COO says, hey, these are the announcements and major things that everybody needs to be aware of. Try to keep it short and sweet. Our goal is to have huddles in like 15 to 30 minutes, something like that, okay? So we have announcements, and then it goes into reports. And in reports, everybody shares 3 things, okay? This is important. I wanna make sure to write this down. All right, so in reports, everybody shares, these are the most important things I did yesterday, all right? And tell people right out of the gates, this is not to brag about I did A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Nobody cares, okay? These are the things that you did that everybody needs to be aware of. If people don't need to be aware of it, then don't repeat it. And if you start to mention that team members are trying to like just say things so they look like they're busy, then talk to them about it on the side. All right, so that's the first thing. The second thing is this is the most important thing, or the 2 most important things that I'm going to get done today. All right, this is my day. This is what really matters. And again, if it doesn't matter, then you don't have to say it. And then the third thing in the daily huddle is this is what I need help with, okay? This is what I need. I need, I'm stuck on this, or I'd like to meet with you about this, whatever that might be, okay? And that's a daily huddle. So in addition to daily huddles, you're probably gonna wanna have weekly meetings. Golly, I didn't even realize how bad my handwriting was until I started using this thing. You wanna have weekly meetings for departments. And you might be saying, well, Matt, I got a small team, or I'm all by myself. Remember this, it doesn't matter if you are a company of 1. And in fact, if you are a company of 1, having these meetings becomes even more important. All right, well, so that's really stupid to have a meeting by yourself. No, it's not. Because if you're trying to get a company off the ground and you're not taking time to specifically think about, so a weekly department meeting, marketing. If your company doesn't have consistent ongoing marketing, are you ever gonna become a company of more than 1 person? The answer to that is no. Therefore, do you think it's worthwhile to put into your schedule on a weekly basis a 30-minute call where you specifically focus on marketing? The answer is absolutely yes, you do, okay? So think about what are the different department meetings that my company needs to have to make sure that we're keeping on track in all areas. And then in addition to that, you're probably gonna wanna have some kind of either monthly. All right, we're just now getting to the point where our company at Bot Builders is now going to start having monthly meetings where everybody comes on board, designers, programmers, the people that aren't in the general daily huddle. You probably want to have yearly meetings, all right, but just schedule these things in advance. The important thing is get your recurring meetings into your calendar. If you're taking notes right now, put a big old asterisk. I need to have these meetings in my schedule, okay? All right, next one are going to be meetings that you schedule on a just as needed basis. So a couple different kinds there. Number one is if you got emergency meetings, like ding, 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 we got something that we need to do. As these situations come up, I'm telling you, there's nothing better to do than get all hands on deck, gather the wagons around in a circle and get it taken care of. Another thing is project meetings. If you've got a project like this big thing we're trying to do, you know, we're trying to launch a new website or launch a new project, what I really recommend you do is in advance, schedule out the meetings and think of them not as meetings, but think of them as checkpoints. That's a key word right there, checkpoints. Schedule checkpoints so that if you're trying to get this thing done that you know is gonna take a month or two, you've got it scheduled out. So every week, because if you don't have a meeting, a lot of times a whole week will go by and you've achieved nothing and you've gone nowhere. So in that situation, having these checkpoint meetings is gonna make a massive difference. And then the last meeting that I wanna talk to you about are, these are the work meetings, the kind of meetings, I always call them parties, right? So we've got this like thing that we need to handle, right? So we're trying to get the website live. And there's 5 people working on this thing. And what happens is this person's doing this and this person's doing this, and then sometimes we touch base on it. But a lot of times to get something actually to the finish line, the best way to get things done is just have everybody schedule 2 hours in their 1 hour, whatever that amount of time is in their schedule, and have a work party and just say, guys, we're getting together at 2 o'clock and we're gonna get this freaking website live, let's go. All right, so that I can tell you is one of the most effective things that I've done. We always call them parties, that way everybody kind of thinks of it as fun. They show up, cool, maybe we buy pizza, whatever that thing might be. All right, so those are all the different types of meetings that you have. And I did promise you when I told you the 6 keys that I'd give you a 7th key. And that is after your meeting's over, right? You've gone through your agenda, everybody's feeling good, you're very efficient because you're not wasting time, nobody's tonality has gotten out of line, you really have made it an effective usage of time. Always at the end of this thing, always have a fun way that you finish the meeting up, all right? So at our company, Bot Builders, we always go 1, 2, 3, Bot Builders, right? And everybody just, it's cheesy. It's so cheesy. But the thing about it is everybody always leaves on a high note. They get out, they go, and they've got their plan and they rock the thing out. So those are the absolute essentials to running not only an effective meeting, but also a fun meeting. Go out and make it happen and make that team kick some butt. Nice going, champ, but we don't have to stop here. If you want to really be ambitious, click on one of these videos, or if you want to go the extra mile, hover over my head, click on subscribe, and then click the little bell. If you want some free goodies, go to swipemystuff.com, and I'll see you in the next training.